New Thought Media Network proudly presents Lindsay Leimbach, Practicing Infinite Possibilities, Fridays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And now, here's Lindsay.
Hey everyone, welcome to PIP. Guess who came up to visit with me? Buster. Practicing infinite possibilities. You ready to do that today, Buster? Buster's always ready for that. Let me put him down. Well, welcome. If you are on the West Coast, you're having coffee with me, and if you're on the East Coast, you're having lunch. Hey, Jackie, thank you for showing up. I know there's lots of you guys showing up, and you might be showing up on New Thought Media Network, which is great. You might be doing it on the YouTube, which is great. You might be doing it on my Facebook Live. But please know also that it is recorded. So welcome to all those are recorded. Now, in our episode 5, we talked about, here it is, the Book of Joy, okay? And in the Book of Joy, it was written by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I recommend to go back and see that. But they talked about in this book that there's 8 pillars to joy, 8 of them, okay? There's perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. And they said these pillars, if you work on these pillars, what they do is they give you resilience, because there is a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is fleeting. It's for the moment. I'm happy when I go to Disneyland. I'm happy when I had Buster up here. I'm happy to be with you. But impermanence takes happiness and it disappears, right? Because everything is in impermanence. Joy is resilience. Joy is where you're able to have that core of resilience inside of yourself, where you can have a peace of mind even when you're not happy. Yeah, even when you're not happy. So joy is actually much more related to the concept of mindfulness, being aware in the moment. Mindfulness, being aware in the moment without having attachments to your stories, without having that worry, anxiety, that roommate in your mind that goes, wah, 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 wah. Okay, mindfulness is being aware in the moment of what's really going on and having that level of acceptance. When you're able to have that level of acceptance and that calmness, that's more the definition of joy. Of course, you can be happy in that moment. So joy and happiness go together. But you can say that you made it through an exam, or that you're dealing with a health crisis, or you're dealing with a difficult person, and you're dealing it with them with mindfulness, with compassion, with kindness, and that can bring you joy. I wouldn't say it's happiness to deal with these situations, but it can bring you joy that you have the resilience to be able to not be in a stress reaction, and you can keep your heart open. All right, last week we went really into humility, and I want to go back to that because humility is a superpower. I said it. I said, everyone, humility is a superpower. Get excited about this. And I know that sounds like, what? And what's so funny is, like, I was advertising for this, telling people, advertising, or spreading the word to come to my class. That's not very humble. Come to my class. It's so good. And I'm teaching about humility. So, but I'm going to get to that. So I'm going to talk about what, why, and how with humility. So what is humility? What is it? Okay. Humility is the awareness that life isn't all about you. It's the awareness, that mindfulness, that you can have that centered feeling. And you can look out and realize that every person that you meet wants to be happy. Every person you see on the TV wants to feel safe. Every person that has ever lived didn't want to die, but we all do die, right? And we all have different tools and techniques on how to allow ourselves to be safe. So when you have that non-judgmental mind and you look at someone and you're like, they are not acting like me. How dare them? Well, that's the judging mind. When they're saying, how dare them? Could they have that opinion? Could they do that action? When you realize really the core is that they want to be safe and they want to be happy, but they don't have the tools and techniques like you. We don't know how they were raised. We don't know what culture they come from. We don't know all the things that's in the subconscious mind. And I really talked about that a lot in episode 1 and episode 2 of PIP, Practicing Infinite Possibilities. So if you want to learn more about how the brain takes in information and memory, that's a good referral just to say. But they've had a lot of things that impacted their life. They were told a lot of information. And maybe also they weren't told any information. Another one's no one has educated them in a different way. So when we realize that people are always acting and taking in information through either sticks or carrots, that's the way the brain works, sticks or carrots. They're avoiding pain and they're running to carrots. They're trying to get rewards. Now, that is a real, what I call a caveman mind, where we're always either trying to avoid pain or we're trying to get the award. If we realize other people are doing that as well, then you sit back and you think, oh, now I understand. They're actually much more like me. We all have the same tool, this brain. We all have the exact same tool, but their programming is different. Their programs and mine not necessarily is the right programming. It certainly is not the right programming for everybody. So it's very interesting that we need to realize that the whole world is functioning from this level. And when you can get over yourself and think that your programming is right, when you think your programming is right and you're open to learn other people's, that adds humility. That adds humility. When you realize that we're actually much more alike than different, that brings you down a notch and says, listen, this isn't all about us. Now, we talked about the 4 agreements in the past. I think that was like in episode 4. And I said, don't take life so personally. Don't take everything so personally. Really, that's a humility, a humble statement. Because it's saying that people aren't doing what they're doing to hurt you. They're doing what they're doing because of the programming in their brain. So stop thinking that their actions and their reactions are your responsibility or your cause. You have to realize they have that in their brain, and don't take it so personally. So what is humility? Why is it a superpower? It's because it gives you that level to be able to be mindful, to actually see that we're much more alike than different, to stop judging everyone from your point of view and say, you know what, they have their point of view. It might not agree with yours, but they have theirs, and you have to let them have theirs. And if you feel like theirs is not right, I'm putting it in quotations, then you really should reflect first on yourself. Why is it not right to you? Is it not right because it's causing harm? Or is it not right because they're not following your directions and they're not doing it the way you would do it? If it's because they're causing harm, then you can work into responsibility and take action. If it's because they're not doing it the way you want to do it because you want to control your environment, you're not being humble. You've got to let that go. You cannot control other people. All right, so let's go into also why. Now, the Dalai Lama talks about in the Book of Joy that he actually had great anxiety when he was young, when he went out and spoke. And I thought, isn't that so interesting? Because who here has anxiety? Well, it made me feel good to know that the Dalai Lama fessed up that he had great anxiety at times. And he realized the reason why he had great anxiety is because he thought of himself as special. Now, you got to remember, the Dalai Lama was chosen, and people realized he was the next Dalai Lama at the age of 2. And then he ended up being trained and then took over Tibet for political and spiritual leadership at the age of 15. That is awfully young, right? So someone who was fed that you are special was the Dalai Lama. And he had a lot of anxiety about it. And he said the reason why he was able to get through his anxiety and not feel that way is because he realized he was much more like everybody else than being special. When he felt that he was special, he felt that he was separate. And when we feel that we are separate, then we don't necessarily feel safe. We don't feel supportive. It brings us anxiety. So it goes back to why is humility and understanding that we're all in this together and we're much more alike, and that we are not separate, that we are much more alike is so very, very important. Because when we release the separateness in our ego, when we bring it down a notch, going, this isn't all happening to me because this is all about me and I'm the main character. When you realize this is just how the world is unfolding and you can accept it, your anxiety level goes down. That's a superpower. Having your anxiety level go down, that is awesome. So being humble and realizing the world is happening with me and supporting me, and I'm part of their life and they are a part of mine, brings us together. Now, this is an interesting fact about the brain. When you feel rejected, when you feel lonely, they put, the electrodes all over the brain. When you feel that way, what happens is it's actually activating the same part of the physical pain part of the brain that lights up if you get hit. So who here has ever felt, oh my God, like I remember when I was 18 years old and my first love broke up with me. Oh my God, I sat on the bed and cried as if someone just punched me smack in the stomach. I couldn't believe how physical pain I felt, because now I realized what happened was I felt incredible rejection, absolute rejection. And it affected my brain as it did, as if I did get punched. I couldn't even catch my breath. I was so upset. So that separateness, that rejection, that loneliness, that really plays a role in your own brain. But once again, if we become mindful and we realize that we're never really alone, we're all in this together, and that we have source running through us at all times that connects us with everything, even when we feel like we're not, maybe not with someone or with the world outside physically. Inside, I have it all. I have that light. And so you don't have to go into that rejection. Humility allows you to open your heart to accept that you are interconnected with everything. And this is a blessing. This is where you can face your challenges. This is where you don't have to allow your brain to go into the stress reaction or into the physical pain reaction when you're thinking of emotional things, because you are part of it all. So having humility allows you to have the superpower of feeling interconnected with everything, all prayers, all source, all God, all energy, all nature. That's why getting out of yourself and into the reality of life and love can be a superpower to your heart and your mind. Now, this is a great quote from Eckhart Tolle. Let's see. Here it is. The significance is hiding in the insignificance. Appreciate everything. Let me read that one more time. The significance is hiding in the insignificance. Appreciate everything. I love that quote. So I want to tell you a good story about that. Let me show you. This is just a little piece of cake. Do you see it? Not much. I taught a class yesterday, and I gave everyone a piece of this cake. And I said, what do you think about this cake? And they thought, well, I was being generous, not too generous. This is a diet portion of cake, right? Diet portion. Smells good, looks pretty. You can tell it's going to be sweet. They're like, yeah, it's nice. And then I asked everyone to put it in their palm and put their hand over it and close their eyes. And then I told them that a good friend of mine got this cake in India and took it to the Dalai Lama just 2 weeks ago. She was in India, not even 2 weeks, probably like 10 days ago, and took this piece of cake, or took a cake and some other goodies. And she is friends with the Dalai Lama because she was a nun for 27 years in Tibet, and Tenzin is her name, and the Dalai Lama ordained her. So she's actually friends with him. And he blessed her food for her, blessed this piece of cake. Then she packed it all up in a little suitcase and brought it all the way back to the United States. And then she gave me a little loaf of the cake that was blessed by the Dalai Lama that had come all the way back from India. And she gave it to me out of love. We're very good friends, and she's like a soul sister, and I was so appreciative. Then I opened up the package of cake and I separated it, and I gave one piece to everyone in my class. Then I asked them to open their eyes after I told them that story, and I said, look at the cake now. What do you see? And they all were like, I see blessings, I see love, I see connection, I see generosity. Isn't that interesting? The perspective of this little piece of cake completely changed, even though this is an ordinary piece of cake. The beauty of the story is the pip, the possibility of infinite, practicing infinite possibilities, the possibility of this piece of cake. It's all there anywhere. There's blessings and all this. Think about the farmers that planted the seeds, and the sun and the water that grew the seeds to the wheat and to the fruit that's in here and to the sugar cane and all the other things. And then someone harvested and got livelihood from it and then put it on a truck. And then the truck drivers and the roads and all those people. We are interconnected all the time. People are blessing every single thing of energy, and love is in everything we do. This cup, think about how much energy and love and kindness and thought that goes all the way back to this being a mineral and made into clay and coming to me. Everything is a miracle. And this cake seemed like a miracle for a moment, but when I told her the story behind the cake, then it became this incredible amount of blessing and love. But what we can realize is everything is like that. That's having the humble mind, having the humble mind. I want to tell you another quick story about Tenzin Kiyosaki, who is my friend. She, when she was a nun in India, she told me that she lived near the Dalai Lama, and he has a big building. I'm not going to explain this exactly right, but there is a pathway around the big building, and it was raining, and she saw an old man in normal clothes walking through the mud, and it started to rain, and it was very treacherous. And she went up to him and said, what are you doing? And he said, I am going to circumvent the Dalai Lama's home in prayer. And she said, that's a wonderful idea, but it's raining today and it's not safe for you to do this. Let me walk you back to your home. So she did, and she walked into his hut, and he had nothing. He just had like a bed, and he had a Buddha statue, and he had a mat. He was very poor. So she, as a nun, had a little bit of money, and she left some money, and she went back and gave him some food, and she would check on him once in a while, this old man, just humble old man. Then she found out that he passed. And when she found out, one of her nuns knew that she passed and said that they found him in the lotus position, and he had been sitting in that lotus position. He died in it, and he was there for days before people recognized that he actually had died. And she realized that this was actually a master teacher that she saw as a humble peasant man, but treated him as infinite possibilities of perfection and helped him, but didn't do it because he was a master teacher. She did it because he was a human being. That's living in your humility. This is one reason why I love her so much. And she went back to his hut, and the neighbor was crying and sitting in his hut. And she said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I didn't know. I just thought he was an ordinary man. I didn't know. I just thought he was an ordinary man." He was an ordinary man, just like the Dalai Lama said. He was ordinary just like you, but he was enlightened just like you. We all have it inside of us. We all do. It's through humility that we get to practice our higher being. The Dalai Lama said that when he goes into great meetings, sometimes he wishes that something will go wrong. Isn't that funny? And the interviewer that I saw that talked to the Dalai Lama about wishing that something would go wrong, he said, "I want it to go wrong because, like, if a chair breaks or a piece of fruit falls on the ground or something, then everyone becomes a human being again. When you walk into these meetings," he's like, "everyone's so proper, and their ego," and he didn't use the word ego, but he's like, "their sense of self is me, and I got to be powerful, and I got to do this," and they aren't humble. But when something goes wrong, it breaks that. You ever heard where sometimes you got to crack it open so the light can come in? He goes, it cracks it open so the light can come in. And the humanity that we're actually in this meeting, and we're all just people trying to help. We're all in, and it just takes that egocentric narcissist air out of the room. And sometimes people just start to laugh. And he said, laughter is also the gateway to humility. Laughter. And the best thing to laugh at sometimes is yourself. Right? Get over yourself and laugh at yourself. It's a wonderful thing to do. One time I wrote an email to my friend. She sent me this really good idea and philosophy and thought. And so I wrote back to her, "Oh, that's wonderful. It brought me lots of contemplation." So this is through an email, but I'm dyslexic and I messed up my words. And I wrote, "That brought me a lot of constipation." She emailed me back. She goes, "I think I know what you're talking about. You meant contemplation, not constipation." But that's what I saw. Yes, I had spell check. Spell check said constipation was perfect. It's just what I did. But you've got to laugh at that. That is my imperfection, which makes me perfect because I'm imperfect, and we're all imperfect. And when you can hold on to that humility, it makes you a superpower because you're not judging yourself. You're just relaxing into it sometimes and go, more to learn, more things to laugh at. Oh, fell down today. I get up. That's good. So last week I've talked about how do you see humility in your life? And I talked about putting people first and mindfully listening. And I also talked about you can make difficult decisions because you're not basing them on the egocentric that is fear-based. It's the compassionate heart in decision making and seeing all sides. So feel free to look back in episode 5 on me going to that. But I want to talk about 3 more things on how you can cultivate humility in your life. Number 1, right, is have a beginner's mind. Isn't that what they talk about all the time? Have a beginner's mind, meaning know that you don't know everything and accept it and get excited about it. Curiosity is wonderful. And sometimes when you go into the curious mind, fear does come arise because you're going into the unknown. But that's part of the human brain. Remember how the human brain's programmed? Doing something you don't know does generate this sense of uneasiness. It's okay. Be mindful, be aware of that. Go, this is not just how I feel when I'm doing something that I don't know how to do. This is how everybody feels. Accept that fear and then go past that fear into the unknown. Go into the curious mind. Learn more. When someone says something you don't like, instead of telling them why you don't like it, why don't you just ask them, why do they have that opinion? Could you explain that a little further? What do you mean by that? How do you define that word? A lot of times when my husband and I disagree and he says something that irks me, I realize it's not, when I ask him questions, we're not really disagreeing. We're just having different vocabulary words, definitions to vocabulary words, and I'm misunderstanding what he's trying to tell me. Ask questions. Learn, grow. It's so exciting. That's what our brain does. Neuroplasticity. That's what I talked about in episode 2 is the neuroplasticity. We get to keep learning. As human beings, we can change our programming. We can become more humble and use all these techniques and grow and learn and celebrate and be part of everyone and everything and just see the magnificent in the little piece of cake. Right? The magnificent in the little piece of cake. Another thing that humble people do is that they are able to speak their mind. And this is something that I think is really important for you to understand. So a lot of times people think that when you're talking about humility, that means that you're just sheepish or shy or, oh, whatever. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Humility is a superpower to bring down our worries and our anxieties and feel interconnected, feel more compassionate, more alive, to see all the miracles and get out of ourselves and stop taking life so personally and really step into the joy. So I want to read this one little section. Now, forgive me in my dyslexic reading. Here we go. On humility, about what the Dalai Lama said. Humility is the recognition that your gifts are from God. Oh, let me just tell you, once I said the word God, I realized the Dalai Lama didn't say this. Archbishop Tutu. Let me get the quote right. Archbishop Tutu. Okay, humility is the recognition in your gifts are from God. And this lets you sit relatively loosely in those gifts. Humility allows us to celebrate the gifts of others, but it does not mean you have to deny your own gifts or shrink from using them. God uses each of us in our own way. And even if you are not the best one, you may be the one who is needed or the one who is there. Amen. Right? Amen to that. I love that. I want to hear an amen from everyone on that one. To saying that we all have gifts. When you have humility in your heart, you know everybody else has gifts. Everyone was born with their own unique gifts, and we get to cultivate them and bring them out and shine them. They're not mistakes. That's why you're here. They're your journey. Your journey. But your gifts and your journey is not necessarily should be defined for other people's gifts or their journey. Parents can often think that their gifts and their journey, and they put it onto their children, and that's not necessarily fair. We want to even be humble with our own children. Yes, I might be able to be a great public speaker. Well, that's not very humble of me, but I enjoy it. It is my passion and I know it. So I will say I will stand into it because God gave me this gift, but it doesn't make it the gift of my children or my friends. They have their own gifts and I love to see their gifts developed. I love to see people shine, show me. Let's do this together. We have the interconnection of being able to support each other. We're all in this together. And when you feel alone, it feels bad. But when you feel supported and when you know that people coming into your life are there for purpose, even difficult people are there for purpose, and you can learn and grow, and you can get beyond that you have to be right. But instead of being right, you can learn. Wow. That is a humble mind. Look more into it. Try some of the techniques I've talked about. What I'm speaking is from my heart and true for me, but you have to try it out. You try being humble. See, it doesn't mean that you're sheepish. Remember that. It means you have the courage to allow other people to have other opinions, that you have the courage to face your fears and go on the other side and see creativity and learn new things, explore, grow, shine. Humility is a superpower. And it makes me so excited to say that, because that's not said too much in our culture. But I think if we practice humility and laugh at ourselves a little more and love and appreciate other people for who they are, and the earth and the animals and the stars and all the people before us and all the people in the future, life will be more resilient, more peaceful, and most of all, more joyful. More joyful. Okay, next week, I want you to know, take this in, our topic next week, I want to say, I am enough. I chose that because we're going from humility to I am enough, Lindsay? That sounds like polar opposite, but it's not. Duality is a human thing that happens in human consciousness, and we need to know how to understand it. So I am enough can change your life, just like practicing humility. Stating I am enough is a superpower too. So that's what we're going to do next Friday. I want to thank everybody for joining me. It is my pleasure. It is my passion. And I am so thankful to my producers, and so thankful to New Thought Media Network. It's a nonprofit organization that lives on, our donations, that they've given me this platform. And I highly recommend everybody to see other people on New Thought Media Network. They're brilliant. They're loving. Shine. Let your gifts go out into the world, live with passion, live with joy, see the infinite possibilities. And remember, when you see a little piece of cake, it's not a piece of cake. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Blessings to all. Peace, love, and joy. Infinite possibilities. Thank you.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents Lindsay Leimbach, Practicing Infinite Possibilities, Fridays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific.